Hello, and thank you for joining us tonight on the Capitol Report on NTD Television, where we bring you the latest news straight from our nation's capital. I'm Steve Lance, and here's a look at some of the stories we've been covering for you today. The snowstorm that hit Virginia and Washington, D.C. on Monday left hundreds of drivers stranded on the interstate overnight. Over 1 million cases were reported in the U.S. on Monday alone. President Biden addressed the nation on the record highs. His solution: more testing and more vaccination. Senate Leader Chuck Schumer is ramping up momentum for a national voting rights law, joining other Democrats on Capitol Hill today. Schumer told reporters why they must change the Senate rules. He says so the federal government can have more oversight during elections. Just south of the nation's capital, hundreds of Virginia motorists waited desperately for help after being stranded for nearly 24 hours in freezing temperatures along a 50-mile stretch of an interstate. On Monday, a tractor-trailer crash brought all vehicles to a halt, paralyzing parts of I-95 in Virginia. Democratic Senator Tim Kaine had been stranded overnight.
So I left my house in Richmond at 1 o'clock yesterday and was doing fine until about King's Dominion. But I have now been in the car almost 21 hours.
More desperate social media posts indicated that drivers were running out of food, water, and fuel. They started questioning if Governor Northam would send in the National Guard. The governor responded that there was no lack of manpower, but that the difficulty of getting workers and equipment through the snow and ice was the cause. Senator Kaine put out another tweet about a Connecticut family
From Connecticut who was coming back from a Florida vacation took the bag of oranges that they were bringing home as a souvenir and started walking them up and down the lines of parked cars.
As of about noon on Tuesday, the Virginia Department of Transportation said that they were making progress in clearing out the jam, but still had not removed the disabled tractor-trailers. Thousands of people have been stuck on I-95 since Monday. Nearly 1 out of 100 Americans have tested positive for the CCP virus in just the last week alone. In President Biden's address today, he emphasized the effects of vaccination and blamed the unvaccinated for cases surging to record levels.
This continues to be a pandemic of the unvaccinated. So we got to make more progress.
Over 1 million CCP virus cases were reported in the U.S. on Monday alone. The Omicron variant accounted for more than 95% of all new cases.
We're going to see, as you all have been hearing, continued rise in cases. Omicron is very transmissible variant, but much different than anything we've seen before.
Biden again urged Americans to take vaccines, booster shots, and to wear masks when in public places. The White House plans to double the purchase of Pfizer COVID pills, ordering up to 20 million treatments. The drug costs roughly $530 per treatment. Ohio Senator Rob Portman tested positive for the CCP virus on Tuesday, but the senator says he's not experiencing any symptoms. He's the latest lawmaker on Capitol Hill to test positive amid the current wave of Omicron. Portman said he took an at-home COVID-19 test on Monday night while preparing to return to Washington, D.C. He will self-isolate for 5 days and work remotely for the week. Portman has been a vocal advocate for the vaccine and participated in a clinical trial for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in 2020. According to statistics, the CCP virus has ravaged the Capitol, and positivity rates have jumped from 1% to 13%. So far, over 100 U.S. senators and representatives have been diagnosed with the CCP virus. And Walmart has temporarily closed about 60 stores for sanitizing against the CCP virus. In December, the retailer closed dozens of stores for 2 days, mostly across Texas and New Jersey. They have yet to comment on whether there was an outbreak at any of these locations. Last week, Apple closed its stores in New York City amid the surge of Omicron. With President Biden's Build Back Better bill looking hopelessly stalled in the Senate, Senate Leader Chuck Schumer is changing focus to voting rights. Democrats on Capitol Hill are using the momentum that they've created this week on the anniversary of January 6th to ignite the push for more federal oversight in elections. NTD's Melina Wisecup reports from the Capitol.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is using every opportunity he can get to get his message across that election reform must happen. In 3 separate on-camera appearances today, Schumer repeated that the stakes are high. He and other Democrats are trying to draw a parallel between the need for federal-level election reform and last year's Capitol breach. Let's see what they're saying about this.
The election subversion efforts we're seeing all across the country today are a direct continuation of January 6th and the big lie.
That's what's going on. The Freedom to Vote Act sets basic federal minimum standards that says it's safe to vote.
Now, Democrats say this bill is needed to give voters easier access to the ballot box. It's in direct response to Republican-led states passing election laws to reform their own elections, how they run their elections. But essentially what this bill in Congress would do is it would set national requirements for elections, essentially giving the federal government more of a say over how states run their elections. Now, Republicans are blocking this bill from reaching Biden's desk. So Senate Leader Schumer says the new path forward is to change the Senate rules so Democrats can pass this election reform bill on their own.
We have no choice but to move forward. And rules have been changed in the past. And that's an important point we're making to Senators Manchin and Senator Sinema.
But even taking this approach doesn't seem to be an easy win for Democrats. That's because Senators Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin are reserved when it comes to changing the Senate rules with a simple majority vote. So even taking this path seems to be a stretch for Senate Leader Schumer here. Now, aside from that, what's also a stretch is passing Biden's Build Back Better bill. Senator Manchin today says that he's currently not in negotiation talks with the White House about this. Here's Manchin today expressing why he's a holdout vote on both of these Democratic priorities.
Our country is divided, and I don't tend to do anything that divides our country anymore. So whatever I can do to unite and bring people together, and that means you have to work harder as you work across the aisle to bring people together.
Melina, it looks like Schumer's only option here is to find some common ground with Senators Manchin and Sinema. Did Schumer say whether he's made any progress negotiating with these two?
Schumer today did say he was meeting with Senators Manchin as well as 8 other senators so they could discuss voting rights and hopefully make a path forward for this. But as to whether those negotiation talks were successful, it's still unclear. But you're absolutely right. Schumer here is really having to navigate a narrow path, and that's why he's forcing this vote on the voting rights as well as the Build Back Better. He's hoping that by forcing these floor votes on these 2 priorities, those centrist lawmakers will feel the heat and hopefully feel pressure to comply.
All right, so we'll be keeping an eye on that. Thanks, Melina. You may have heard by now that Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has been permanently banned on Twitter for what the company says she was posting misleading information about COVID-19. Twitter has yet to specify exactly which post it was that resulted in her permanent removal from the platform. The Congresswoman isn't the only one who has had their account banned. Renowned scientist Dr. Robert Malone, a co-inventor of mRNA vaccine technology, has also been barred from the platform. Brian Leib is the executive director for Iranian Americans for Liberty, and we're happy to have him on to discuss. Brian, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Steve. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you so much.
Brian, I want to ask you, we've seen another flurry of high-profile voices getting banned from Twitter, from members of Congress to well-respected doctors. Your organization has recently issued a statement asking these same big tech companies to remove officials from the Iranian regime as well. Why is that?
Well, it's the height of hypocrisy, in our opinion, Steve, that the Islamic Republic regime officials, from the Ayatollahs all the way through everyone throughout the regime, is able to have access to U.S.-based social media platforms, from Twitter to Instagram to Facebook, but yet the Iranian people don't have access to any of these platforms. They're actually banned inside of Iran. So it's the height of hypocrisy for a regime to ban social media in their own country, but yet we still give them access to it. And listen, Steve, this is a regime that unfortunately has a track record of censoring, oppressing, and murdering their own citizens over the last 40 years. Just 2 years ago, they murdered over 1,500 Iranians who were peacefully protesting against this regime. And it should be noted that when the Iranian people took to the streets, the regime shut down the internet. So there was no way for the Iranian people's message to get out there. So our statement to Breitbart, I think, is a wake-up call for Democrats and Republicans, both in the House and Senate, to really get going on doing something to restrict, if not ban altogether, Islamic Republic regime officials from being able to use a platform to sow division, spread misinformation, and again, their own people don't have access to the platform, so why should the regime officials have access?
That's an interesting point. This does seem like a bipartisan issue. Do you see a path where Democrats and Republicans can come together to tackle the threat from Iran?
It should be. It certainly should be bipartisan for the United States of America to say that a country like the Islamic Republic of Iran is not an ally, is not a partner of ours. This is a country that's been chanting death to America and, of course, death to Israel, one of our strongest allies in the region for decades. This is not a country that shares our values. This is not a country that wishes good for the American people. So it should be a bipartisan manner, both in the House and in the Senate, for people to come together to say enough is enough. Again, it's the height of hypocrisy, Steve, for the Ayatollahs and for the Iranian foreign minister and all these individuals to be able to send out tweets in 10, 15 different languages, but their own people don't have access to it. How does that make sense? Now, I understand that sometimes in Congress common sense is in short supply, but this is certainly common sense. It's common sense for Democrats and Republicans to work together to restrict, if not ban altogether, Islamic Republic regime officials from being able to continue to spread misinformation.
Now, Brian, my last question for you. How close of a relationship does Iran have with China? And should that relationship be any cause for concern?
That relationship is certainly cause for concern, Steve. Great question. Over the summer, the Islamic Republic of Iran and the People's Republic of China did a quite large trade and economic deal that will see Beijing investing $400 billion over the next 25 years into the Islamic Republic. Now, listen, that's a lot of money, right? That's a lot of money, but let me just frame that for you for a minute now. The Islamic Republic hasn't seen even $10 million in outside investment over the last 10 years. No foreign country has ever invested in the Islamic Republic because they know that the money will go to just enriching regime officials. So the very fact that China is going to be investing $400 billion over the next 25 years into Iran, I think tells us everything we need to know. Also about America's position of strength on the world stage. Unfortunately, as I mentioned just earlier, President Biden's been projecting weakness from day one, and China, Russia, and a lot of other bad actors are taking advantage of that.
Brian Leib, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
The U.S. Attorney's Office has announced that a former scientist at GlaxoSmithKline has pleaded guilty to conspiracy to steal trade secrets from GSK to benefit a Chinese pharmaceutical company. The U.S. Attorney's Office announced this on Monday. According to the official statement, Lucy Shi, who formerly worked for GSK on developing biopharmaceutical products, stole GSK's trade secret data and information to benefit Renault Pharma, a company established by her husband. The company received financial support and subsidies from the Chinese communist regime and was used as a repository of information stolen from GSK. 3 defendants in this case have pleaded guilty for their roles. A record 4.5 million American workers quit their jobs in the month of November. Meanwhile, job openings declined by well over 6%. And 1 year after the U.S. Capitol was breached by protesters, the U.S. Capitol Police Board is talking about the improvements made to secure the Capitol grounds and their future plans to secure the building. The heavy snow dumped in Washington, D.C. gave many another day off. Some made the most of the piled up snow with a giant snowball fight on the National Mall. We'll take a look at what's being called the Battle of SNOMICRON. Ahead of the anniversary of the January 6th breach of the U.S. Capitol, the Board of the Capitol Police outlined the measures it is taking to enhance the long-term security of the Capitol grounds.
The United States Capitol Police, as an organization, is stronger and better prepared to carry out its mission today than it was before January 6th of last year.
In a press briefing, the Capitol Police Chief talked about some of the major changes that have already taken place within the agency.
For the past year, our focus has been implementing improvements that would provide our officers with the resources that they need to fulfill their responsibilities safely and effectively.
Manger said that they've received dozens of reports with over 100 recommendations since last year.
We've improved the way that we gather, analyze, share, and use and disseminate intelligence. We've brought on an operational planning expert from the United States Secret Service to develop a blueprint for handling large events with a focus on intelligence, assets, and coordination both internally and with our outside partners as well.
Manger also said that they're providing in-person briefings for uniformed officers before major events and providing cell phones for all officers so that they can receive daily intelligence and operation information. They also expanded officer safety and wellness initiatives and improved public communication. In the January 6th breach last year, leadership at the Capitol Police came under hard criticism. The agency had underwent leadership changes as well as increased funding and made what they referred to as internal adjustments. However, the most pressing issue the force still faces is staffing. Manger told Fox News earlier that they're short of about 400 officers after a surge of retirements and resignations in the wake of the January 6th Capitol breach. Longtime U.S. Representative Bobby Rush of Illinois announced on Monday that he won't be seeking re-election. The 75-year-old 15-term congressman was elected in 1992. He represents his hometown of Chicago. He is the chairman of the Energy Subcommittee. Congressman Rush is the only politician to win a race against Barack Obama, easily defeating the then state senator in a 2000 congressional primary. On Monday, the Department of Justice announced a new rule requiring firearm merchants to have gun storage and safety devices on site for their customers. Attorney General Merrick Garland said it would help prevent guns from falling into the wrong hands. This rule came 1 month after the parents of school shooting suspect Ethan Crumbley had been arrested for involuntary manslaughter. They are accused of making the gun accessible to their teenage son and not doing anything to intervene. The gun was stored in an unlocked drawer. In November, American workers quit their jobs at record numbers. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, over 4.5 million Americans quit their jobs in November. The drop-offs increased in several industries, including food services, healthcare, and transportation. Meanwhile, job openings declined to over 10 million, yet the number of job vacancies increased throughout finance, insurance, and government sectors. And with all that piled up snow, folks in the nation's capital made the best of it with a giant snowball fight on the National Mall.
Today we're letting it all loose on unsuspecting adults.
They're calling it the Battle of SNOMICRON, trying to find some lightheartedness in a city that is facing a wide range of pandemic measures. It got pretty intense, too. Opposing armies of snowball fighters faced off on D.C.'s National Mall. Adults and kids making the most of this first storm of the year.
Yeah. We haven't done it before, but I heard on the radio that it was happening, and we were like 20 minutes away in Alexandria. So I was like, you know what? Let's go.
They made use of the National Mall's wide open space. Each side took turns in an epic battle against the backdrop of the Smithsonian Castle. A fun way to kick off the new year. For some, the snowball fight offered a nice change of pace from their regular routine.
Well, we got a bunch of snow, and then Bailey texted me after we both slept in and said, "What are you doing? Let's go to the snowball fight." So I got all my stuff out of the closet, got all suited up, and came down here.
The battle was organized by a DC Facebook group called the Washington, D.C. Snowball Fight Association. If you're in D.C. for the next snowstorm, stay on the lookout for more fun snowball fights. That's all we have for you tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with more fair, unbiased news direct from our nation's capital. Don't forget to stay up to date with all of the latest breaking news by following us on all of your favorite social media platforms. I'm Steve Lance. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.